December 7th, 1941. The sky over Pearl Harbor fills with smoke. 2,400 Americans lie scattered across the wreckage of a Sunday morning. Within hours, President Franklin Roosevelt will address Congress. Within days, America will be at war. But there is another crisis unfolding, one that will not make headlines, one that begins not on the deck of the USS Arizona, but in the boardrooms of Washington. The problem is simple. The solution will cost $28. America has factories, thousands of them. Aircraft plants in California, tank arsenals in Michigan, shipyards stretching from Maine to Texas, ammunition depots, rubber plants, steel mills, the entire industrial spine of a nation transforming itself into what Roosevelt calls the great arsenal of democracy. These facilities must not fall. They must not burn. They must not be sabotaged by enemy agents who might slip through the darkness with a single match. But who will guard them? The soldiers are going overseas. The young men are shipping out to islands they cannot pronounce, to beaches they have never heard of, to deserts and jungles and frozen mountain passes half a world away. The factories need protection. The arsenals need armed watchmen. The rail yards need sentries, and those sentries need guns. The Defense Supplies Corporation is established in 1941 with a mandate to arm the thousands of civilian guards who will protect America's war production. They need revolvers, reliable, affordable, available immediately. They turn to Colt. At the turn of the 20th century, Colt and Smith & Wesson dominated the American revolver market. Both companies produced .38 caliber service revolvers designed for law enforcement and military use. In 1908, Colt introduced a sleek, modernized handgun called the Army Special, chambered for the powerful .38 Special cartridge. By 1927, with police departments across the nation adopting the weapon, Colt renamed it the Official Police. The name change was strategic. The Army had passed on .38 caliber revolvers, preferring the .45 automatic, but law enforcement embraced the Colt. Chicago, Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York City. The Official Police became the defining image of American police weaponry. By December 1941, the Official Police was selling for $28.50. It was a quality firearm, deep blue finish, checkered walnut grips, polished trigger and hammer. 6 rounds, 4-inch barrel, built on Colt's proven medium frame with their patented positive lock safety mechanism. The government wanted it. The government could not afford it, not at that price, not in those quantities, not with Colt's factories already drowning in orders for M1911A1 pistols and machine guns. The Defense Supplies Corporation balked. $28.50 per revolver. 20,000 revolvers needed. The math was simple. The answer was no. Colt countered with something else. Something stripped down, something utilitarian, something that would cost the government approximately $26 per unit. A savings of $2.50 per gun. Over 20,000 revolvers that represented $50,000 saved for the war effort. They called it the Commando. The modifications were purely cosmetic. The action was identical to the Official Police. The frame was the same. The barrel was the same. The cylinder held the same 6 rounds of .38 special ammunition. But everything that made the Official Police beautiful was gone. The highly polished blue finish was replaced with a dull, gray-green Parkerized coating. Parkerizing was a phosphate treatment that created a matte, corrosion-resistant surface. No reflection, no shine, no beauty, just function. The elegant checkered walnut grips were replaced with molded plastic. Colt called the material Coltwood, reddish-brown, utilitarian, functional. The grips would later become notorious for shrinking over time, leaving gaps against the frame. The checkering was stripped from the trigger, the hammer, and the cylinder release latch. These surfaces were left smooth, plain, unfinished. Every unnecessary polishing operation was eliminated. Every decorative touch was abandoned. The Commando was not pretty. It was not elegant. It was not the kind of gun a man would display in a collection or pass down to his son. It was a working tool, a wartime expedient, a revolver designed for a single purpose: to put a firearm in the hands of guards who needed one. In July 1942, the Defense Supplies Corporation contracted with Colt for 20,000 Commandos. Production began almost immediately. The first revolvers rolled off the line in late 1942, serialized starting at number 1. The Springfield Ordnance District took control of procurement and distribution. The revolvers were stamped with the United States Army Ordnance Department's flaming bomb cartouche, a symbol of military acceptance that had marked American weapons for generations. Inspector stamps appeared on the frames. G.H.D. for Brigadier General Guy H. Drury, W.B. for other inspectors. Each marking told a story of military oversight and quality control. Between March 1943 and June 1944, the Army Ordnance Department received approximately 36,000 commandos. Of these, roughly 20,000 went to the Defense Supplies Corporation for distribution to civilian guards protecting war production facilities. But 16,000 revolvers went elsewhere. Some went to military police units. The Commando was compact, reliable, and chambered for ammunition that was easier to control than the .45 automatic. Military police officers patrolling stateside bases found it adequate for their needs. Some went to the United States Navy. Approximately 1,800 commandos were issued to naval air crews early in the war, carried in leather shoulder holsters by pilots flying patrol missions over vast expanses of ocean. Some went to the Maritime Commission and found their way aboard merchant ships, armed guards protecting convoys carrying supplies across submarine-infested waters. And some went to intelligence services. The Office of Strategic Services, the wartime intelligence agency that would become the Central Intelligence Agency, received thousands of commandos. Approximately 12,800 revolvers were distributed to various military intelligence agencies, including the OSS. Many of these were procured with 2-inch barrels rather than the standard 4-inch model. The shortened barrel made concealment easier. Intelligence operatives and Criminal Investigation Division agents needed firearms that could disappear beneath a jacket. The 2-inch model became known informally as the Junior Commando. Only about 3,450 were manufactured during the war with the shortened barrel. Today, original 2-inch Commandos from wartime production are significantly rarer than their 4-inch counterparts. Reports suggest that even General Dwight D. Eisenhower carried a Commando. The Supreme Allied Commander, planning the liberation of Europe from his headquarters in London, reportedly had one of these utilitarian revolvers among his personal effects. It was not the glamorous weapon of a conquering hero. It was a practical tool for a practical man. The Commando served in roles far from the front lines, but its service was essential. Consider the stakes. In 1942, Nazi Germany launched Operation Pastorius, a sabotage mission targeting American industrial facilities. 8 German agents, trained at a school near Berlin, landed on American shores from U-boats. Their targets included aluminum factories in New York and Tennessee, railroad infrastructure in Pennsylvania, and water facilities across the Midwest. The plot failed only because one of the saboteurs, George John Dash, turned himself in to the FBI and betrayed his comrades. The threat was real. American factories were targets. The guards who patrolled the perimeters of aircraft plants and ammunition depots were not engaged in meaningless theater. They were the last line of defense for the arsenal of democracy. A factory guard in Detroit, pacing the fence line of the Willow Run bomber plant, carried a Commando on his hip. Inside, workers assembled B-24 Liberators at the rate of 1 per hour. A single act of sabotage could halt production, could delay aircraft reaching the Pacific, could cost American lives thousands of miles away. A railroad policeman in Pennsylvania, watching freight cars loaded with artillery shells roll through the yard, held his Commando ready. The shells were bound for ports, for ships, for beaches in North Africa or islands in the Pacific. A guard at the Manhattan Project facilities, protecting the most closely guarded secret in human history, trusted his life to a $28 revolver. Production continued through the war. By the time Japan surrendered in August 1945, Colt had manufactured approximately 50,000 Commandos. Serial numbers ran from 1 to 50,280. The final guns rolled off the line as the war ended. Then came peace. And an interesting thing happened. Most military weapons suffer hard use. Rifles carried through jungle campaigns return battered, worn, scarred by combat. Pistols holstered on the hips of infantrymen crossing Europe show the marks of their journey. But the Commando served mostly on American soil. The guards who carried them faced no enemy fire. The revolvers were drawn for inspections, cleaned, holstered, and carried on quiet shifts through quiet nights. Many Commandos saw virtually no use at all. When the war ended, the revolvers were surplused, distributed to police departments, sold through government channels. Some found their way to National Guard units, replacing their M1911 pistols, which had been recalled for active service. The Alabama National Guard received a documented shipment in 1943 and kept the revolvers for decades. Collectors today prize the Commando for exactly this reason. A weapon designed for emergency use in a nation at war, distributed to guards who mostly never fired them in anger, surviving in remarkable condition because the emergency never arrived at their particular gate. Original World War II. Commandos in excellent condition bring prices ranging from $700 to over $1,300, depending on markings, documentation, and preservation. Examples with OSS provenance, documented through Colt's archival letters, command significant premiums. A Commando with verifiable intelligence service history might sell for several times the price of an ordinary example. The 2-inch Junior Commandos are rarer still. Many 2-inch models encountered today are post-war conversions, standard 4-inch revolvers shortened by gunsmiths after the war. Authentic wartime 2-inch production can be identified by serial number ranges and factory documentation. The Parkerized finish, once considered merely utilitarian, has become part of the Commando's appeal. The dull gray-green coating that saved $2.50 per gun now marks these revolvers as genuine wartime production. Post-war official police revolvers returned to the polished blue finish. Only the Commando wears the matte gray of military specification. The plastic Coltwood grips, prone to shrinkage and cracking, have become collectible in themselves. Replacement grips diminish value. Original wartime plastics, even with their imperfections, authenticate the weapon's history. Colt resumed commercial production of the official police after the war, returning to the pre-war polished blue finish and eventually reintroducing checkered wooden grips in 1954. The Commando designation was never revived. It remained a wartime expedient, a product of necessity, never intended for peacetime production. The official police continued until 1969, when Colt discontinued the model, stating that competitive production of the design was no longer economically feasible. Smith & Wesson had overtaken Colt in the law enforcement market. The era of the classic American service revolver was ending, but the Commando lives on in collections across the country, in gun safes and display cases, in the hands of historians and enthusiasts who recognize what it represents. This was not a weapon designed to win battles. It was a weapon designed to prevent disasters, to deter saboteurs, to protect the industrial capacity that made American victory possible. Consider what those factories produced. Between 1940 and 1945, American industry manufactured nearly 300,000 aircraft, 89,000 tanks, 3 million trucks, 41 billion rounds of ammunition. The factories that built these weapons were as vital to victory as any infantry division. The guards who protected those factories carried commandos, $28 revolvers, 6 shots, 38 special, Parkerized finish, plastic grips, no glory, no headlines, just quiet shifts on dark perimeters, keeping watch over the machinery of war. The Commando never fired a shot in anger on foreign soil. It was never tested in combat against enemy soldiers. It served a different purpose. It stood watch. It deterred. It protected. And because it served its purpose, because the factories it guarded kept running, the weapons that did see combat could reach the soldiers who needed them. That is the legacy of the Colt Commando. Not a warrior's weapon, a guardian's weapon, a symbol of the home front, a $28 sidearm that stood watch over the arsenal of democracy while America's sons fought and died on battlefields across the world. Today, when a collector holds a Colt Commando, feeling the weight of that dull gray frame, running a thumb over the smooth trigger, the weapon speaks. Not of combat, not of heroism in the traditional sense, but of vigilance, of duty, of the thousands of ordinary Americans who guarded the extraordinary effort that won the war. The guards who carried these revolvers are mostly gone now. Their names are not recorded in histories of the war. Their service is not commemorated on monuments, but they served, and their weapon, the humble Colt Commando, survives as testimony to that service. 50,000 revolvers, $28 each, the cheapest insurance policy in American history, the sidearm that guarded more factories than any other weapon ever issued to American hands. Subscribe to the channel for more untold stories of the weapons that shaped history and the quiet heroes who carried them. The arsenal of the past holds more secrets than you realize.